What did you have to grieve in your journey?
I've learned to grieve myself.
We assume that grieving just means when you lose somebody from your life. Grieving can just be as simple as getting, if you're in a marriage or getting a divorce, if you're transitioning from one job to another, just getting older. Grieving is just about loss, but it's about transitions in life.
What does grieving look like?
I had a major grieving moment in my life when my mom suddenly died. I was never, equipped with the foundation or the coping mechanisms to deal with grief. So what did grief look like for me at that moment?
Hey, you beautiful souls. Welcome to the No Place Like Home podcast. It's your host, Michelle Latorre. I am a transformational coach and energy healer. And today we have my beautiful two co-hosts, which is Dr. Sharma and my, I would say, twin flame, also mentor, mindset coach, Kevin Drummet. What did you have to grieve in your journey?
I would say, honestly, I've learned to grieve myself. I've had to witness the death of who I thought was Kevin over and over and over and over again. And I say grieve because you get attached to certain things about yourself, certain things that may or may not be for your best well-being, right? And so just learning to release, and sometimes certain habits, certain mindsets, behaviors no longer serve you. So I had to learn how to grieve and say, hey, like, they're onto new and better things. It's time to let this person that people used to know as Kevin go, and know that there are greater and bigger things ahead. So grieving myself, and then also just grieving all the things that no longer served me, and being okay with that and not feeling guilty about that, especially when it comes to family. As we know, on this journey, you begin to realize that even people that you call close family no longer resonate with you, and you have to prioritize your soul purpose at those time periods, and it's hard, especially when they're people that you grew up with, people that are very close to you. So I would say those would be like my top two: grieving myself, prior versions of myself, as well as those relationships with close family and friends.
I feel like we assume that grieving just means when you lose somebody from your life, like as if it's only associated with a death, whether it's the death of a loved one. But oftentimes grieving can just be as simple as getting, if you're in a marriage or getting a divorce, if you're transitioning from one job to another, just getting older. That transition is you're actually grieving the past that you're leaving behind. Your soul is telling you what's good for you and how you need to move on to the next level. But there's always going to be a part of you that's kind of looking back and being like, and I miss that though. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm missing this, how things used to be. And I think that's really natural. I think it's important for people to really understand that grieving is just about loss, but it's about transitions in life and how we need to approach that and why we feel the way we feel when there's a change that occurs. It's because we're shedding an old part of us that no longer suits our highest self.
We are here to, like, it's growth. No, it's death and rebirth, right? Now, when it comes to that, I think what I want the viewers to kind of like, maybe from you guys' journeys, what does grieving look like? People talk about grieve and like let go and protect your energy, but what does it look like behind closed doors for you guys? Like, what does that experience look like?
Yeah, I could start there. I had a major grieving moment in my life when my mom suddenly died. I think that was a really big turning point in my life. I'm an only child, and I grew up in a very typical Indian household. I was becoming a doctor. Things were getting really good in my life. I was just checking off all the milestones that society had deemed that I needed to become. And so right when I turned 30 years old, I became the chief resident at the institution I was working at. I was looking forward to settling down, maybe getting married. Then all of a sudden, boom, life hits. I get a phone call. My mom's in the hospital and she's got metastatic cancer, and so that moment, I remember sitting there on the couch, watching TV with the girl that I was dating at the time, and just my heart sinking and realizing, wow, like life has now just changed. And things were going along so smoothly. I never had dealt with loss prior to that. I had just been fortunate enough to live until I was 30 years old with having all my family intact, all my close friends intact. And this was a new experience. And so she was diagnosed in July of 2012, and she passed away in September of 2012. I mean, that was that fast. And so I was never, equipped with the foundation or the coping mechanisms to deal with grief. So what did grief look like for me at that moment? I basically tried to avoid any pain or emotion that came with that. Again, our CNS system does not like any uncomfortable feelings. It doesn't like pain. And we will do things to distract ourselves from that. And for me, that distraction looked like putting all my time and effort into working. I had just become a physician. And so I felt like, you know what? Let me just dive into the world of working. And instead of working maybe like 60 hours a week, I started working like 100 hours a week. And in the back of my mind, I was just telling myself, I'm a new graduate. I want to be able to prove myself. I want to be able to see more patients so that I get the experience to become a better physician. But I think deep down inside, I was clearly escaping all the tough emotions that were coming up from my mom's sudden death. And so I was in denial. There's a system called the Kubler-Ross system of grief. And, that there's an acronym called DABDA, which is denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and then acceptance. For the next 10 years, I was in a loop of just being in denial, anger, and bargaining with some mild depression. And I just never sat down to fully process that grief of my mom's passing away. On top of that, my dad became sick because of the loss. So it was a lot for me to handle all at that same time. And the way I wanted to handle it was to not handle it. And so that starts leading you down a path of spiraling. But once I recognized that, this is a part of life, I did a 10-year anniversary celebration about a year and a half ago for her death. And it was so cool to see everybody, like my family that I hadn't seen in a long time, come to the church. And we all did a nice celebration of life. And I finally felt at that point that I finally spent enough time healing from that grief and that loss, and that I could finally move forward.
So
yeah.
This is to conclude today's podcast. Thank you guys for listening, and tune in to the next episode.